Welcome to another edition of Talking with Kevin and Son. This show was originally created in order to share stories, our experience, to uplift the power of our voices, and to create based on perspectives, a framework for teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple, is hope, helping other people every day. The topic today is the first HBCU. And for those of you that not sure exactly what an HBCU is, my guest will explain it to you. I'm not going to give it to you. But what I do want to talk about is what does being the first actually mean? I know for me, on the 6 o'clock news, it becomes a groundbreaking event, something that's never been done, setting a standard or paving a way of others to achieve something important, shattering a barrier, or just doing something new. Being the first represents something for other people to follow, something to look up to, challenging the system or things that they're usually to be done. But I've always asked this question of why it's so important for something or someone to be the first. I know in the Black community, being the first is especially important because it does challenge a system. It does present a way to overcome something that's standing in your way, that seems insurmountable and unmovable. For people of color, we've been the first at something for as long as I can remember. Because discrimination is part of our country's history. It is a flagship of a culture that has a platform that would not want to entertain the conversation we're about to have. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a young brother. His name is Darien Threadgill. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, one of the Divine Nine. He's part of the Brotherhood, and I'm a part of a Brotherhood, a Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. He is also a college graduate. We're going to talk about the importance of an HBCU. We're going to talk about the importance of an education from an HBCU. We're going to talk about the culture of an HBCU. And we're going to talk about how it can save the first historically Black college or university in this nation. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome Mr. Darien Threadgill. I'm going to address him as DT, my brother. Hey, D, what's going on?
Everything's going well. How are you today, Kevin?
You know something? I can't complain. And I want to thank you for inviting me to Cheyney University to experience the university firsthand as a human being, as a graduate from one of the 107 historically Black colleges in this country, Central State University, and also to shake the hand of the grandson of a survivor of the Tuskegee Airmen. So thank you for that invitation, and thank you and welcome to the show.
Well, I'm delighted. I'm absolutely delighted.
For listeners that may not know you, you are the interim head of Cheyney's Foundation. Can you explain to me how you came about, what you do, and give us a little bit about your story?
Sure, I'd be happy to. But take it back a little bit further than before I came back here to work at Cheyney. I came here as a student in 1970, kind of a young, disillusioned youth at a Great Valley High School right here in Chester County. And I definitely knew that I wanted to go to an HBCU when I came out of high school. It was a time of enlightenment and challenge here in the country, and a self-realization of who we were as a people, and for me personally, who I was, where I would fit in, and kind of not just not knowing, not being able to figure it out. So I figured I had gone to a predominantly white high school in the system most of my life, and I said, it's time for me to take a look at who I really am and how I fit in. That brought me here to Cheyney in 1970. And right away, I knew I was in a different environment. It was the first time in my life I had been in an environment where just about all of my teachers were Black. All of my classmates just about were Black. People that looked like me, people that had a similar journey to mine, and a similar perspective on how the country was developing or not developing, and had similar experiences. But it was also an opportunity for me to find new opportunity and a self-realization as to what was really within me. Within the first 24 hours of being here, I met people that told me, you're really creative. You have great potential and tremendous intellect. That was completely foreign to me. So when I came to Cheyney, that was a real difference. And the reason I came back was President Walton asked me, just to flash forward ahead if I could. President Walton asked me to come back. I had already been doing some things because I love my university and we were challenged, and he asked me to come back and work on fundraising. And then I figured that out, and I got reasonable results and started moving along. He said, well, I'm going to move you over to institutional advancement. I said, okay, I will figure that out. So one of the big projects I did there was I led the recent program for Founders Day, which is big for our university. And when I finished with that project, he said, I'm going to move you again. And I said, President Walt, every time I seem to understand, my footing on the ground, understand what I'm doing, you move me somewhere new. And he said, I know you'll figure it out. So he put me in charge of the Cheyney Foundation, which is really an independent organization or enterprise where our purpose is to grow the university's brand and raise funds for the university. It's to put a public picture of what the university is about, engage other foundations, engage other universities, other opportunities to showcase the best of the university, the needs of the university, the path forward of the university, and to seek financial support for that. So that's what the foundation basically does. The interim head, which in my mind means at least if I do a good job, I can go from interim to permanent. So I plan to do a good job.
Well, I hope this conversation today skips all the interim stuff and you go directly to a permanent position, because, sitting on the bench is not always the most comfortable place to be when you don't know your future. Getting in the game is how we learn how to play the game. So it's not a test market. And the reason why I preface it the way that I did, you and I had a conversation over the weekend. I know for some that had listened to me early on when I started my podcast, we were going through the pandemic and the George Floyd incident. I had publicly stated, I said, what would happen to the landscape of education if all of our academic and athletic talent went to one of the 107 historically Black colleges or universities? I'm just curious, within 2 years, what would the landscape of that be? Deion Sanders, put a period on the question that I was asking. But I asked you that question. And if you don't mind sharing your take on that conversation, what do you think as an educator? I'm just a layman person. I just happen to have a degree from one of the greatest institutions in this country, Central State University, which I'm proud. I am also part of the Divine Nine Central Phi Beta Sigma. But take the question mark and put a period on what I just said to you. What would be the mindset of the whole entire country? And the reason why I say that is because it is important for our young people to know and our parents to know that many of these institutions, out of 3,000 universities and colleges that exist that are not Black institutions, they will cheer for you or cheer for us on Friday and Saturday and going through March Madness and everything else. And then 4 years later, they will vote against your financial freedom, place where you can reside, and opportunities. You have already had Florida State that's canceling DEI. So enough of me stating my position. What do you think of that comment I just made?
I think your comment is right on point. I think if we were able to attract, maintain, and grow the talent from our own communities and our own neighborhoods, you would see a tremendous impact throughout this entire nation that people would not be able to believe. America has never been able to embrace the creativity and intelligence of Black people in general. I mean, they've never understood it. They've never really tried to embrace it or tried to understand it. They just saw it as more of a burden, more so than a new source of talent, a new pool of intellect, a new pool of creativity and innovation. They always just kind of really feared it. But if we had the majority, the overwhelming majority of our young people from our community attending HBCUs, you would see a tremendous growth and production from our communities for it. And here's the proof of that. If you look at all 107 HBCUs, that's about 3% of the total number of colleges enrollment in this nation. But yet we produce 20% of the college graduates. So return on investment is massive. If you look at judges, Black judges, we produce 80% of those. Physicians and attorneys, 50% of those attend HBCUs. And on and on and on. STEM, 25% of STEM graduates come from HBCUs, but yet we're only 3% of the college avenue that people seek. So if we were able to keep and maintain and educate our young people at our schools, you would see a tremendous growth and impact on the communities they return to. So that's just my feeling about that. I think the facts bear it out. It's a better investment on the dollar. And you say, well, why? Well, if you what we like, I'll go into why, but.
I'm glad you went there because I had a conversation with a young man that was 6'6" and college bound. And I asked him, where was he going to attend college? He said, one of the California schools. I won't list them. And I said, why haven't you considered a historically Black college? And he goes, I'll never make it to the NBA if I go to any of those schools, which we know that the NFL was a training ground, Grambling University. I mean, a lot of the HBCUs, you look back through our history, have produced some of our greatest athletes in all the sports. So I'm just curious, you brought up STEM, and that's talking about science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. If I took the same curriculum, the same academic books from, I'll say Ohio State, because I'm from Ohio and I love Ohio State. I love Central State more. I took the same books, the same curriculum, and put them in 5 of the struggling universities, which is Cheyney happens to be one of them. Lincoln happens to be another. And I guess Dion turned Jackson State around, but there's some others, but the same books, because they say that, one education is better than another. Is there a difference between what's taught and caught when we're using the same or have access to the same material? Or,
I'm sorry,
or let me say this, as one of our presidents, Roosevelt, said when they were talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, that our brains were too small for us to fly planes. We had the brains of the size of a hamster. Is there a difference between education if we have access to the same information?
Wow, as I said, they've never known how to embrace us and accept us or pull us close to their bosom, if you will, and say, hey, we know you can do this, or we're behind you, or we're on board. We know the talent's there. They just kind of really, filled in the blank for themselves because they had a fear or just plain ignorance. But in terms of, I'll answer your question in this manner. Within 48 hours of being on this campus as a young freshman, I met a young gentleman by the name of Nazim, and explained to me, he was the gentleman who was telling me about being intelligent, being creative. He said, listen, the same degrees that come from St. Joe, Villanova, or any other school, you're going to receive here if you earn it. And the only reason you won't earn it is because you haven't put in the work. And quite frankly, because you have been accepted here, we're expecting you not just to do the work, but we're expecting you to do excellence. We're expecting you to do well, go into the world, make a career, and make a difference. So, and I heard the same thing from my professors. I know it's in you, and I'm going to demand it from you. I know you're going to do well because it's my responsibility to make sure that you learn. All you'd have to do is meet me somewhere along the line. And I was inspired. That's really all it took, for somebody to stand behind me and say, hey, yeah, you can do this. Because quite frankly, all through my high school career, I heard exactly the opposite. I didn't hear the encouragement, was not embraced. I heard, instead of thinking about college, maybe you ought to think about the Army. Whereas in our community, we know we are self-invested in our students. And I think that's one of the key things you'll find when you go to an HBCU on a campus. you'll find people that are invested in you, invested in your success. Understand your road, understand the path you are on, understand that desire that's inside of you that might just be dormant, that needs to be, ignited, needs to be fed. The fire needs to be have some wood fed to it to make it a blaze now, rather than just a small spark. And we understand that. And that line of communication, that line of inspiration, that line of encouragement is invaluable. Invaluable. Many of our kids fail because no one's told them how successful they can be.
That's amazing truth, for the simple fact that, there's a label, and we put labels on everything now. Our community is called underserved. It used to be just poor children, people that didn't have dad or mom in the house, mostly fathers raised by their grandparents. Many of the people that graduate from historically Black colleges are normally, I don't know about you, the first in their families to get a degree. I want to talk about the importance of Cheyney. Many people don't know. Cheyney is the first. Cheyney opened its doors with people that were trying to close their doors. And there's still an opposition today that is hell-bent in order to close those doors and to erase history itself. I don't know why, but I do understand that, for me, education is emancipation. It means, for me, an opportunity, being one of 13, to shine a light and have a liberty. That means to uplift my people through example. It means to me to celebrate the glories of truth, of understanding who came before me and the sacrifices they made. For people of color, having the label put on them as an educated free man, it's something worth standing up and celebrating. Tell me, let's talk about the history of Cheyney. And I know you have something to say behind that. Go ahead, fire away.
Okay, the history of Cheyney is miraculous. I mean, I think Cheyney, we had, like I said, our Founders Day just in February. It's actually February 25th, which was a Sunday this year, and we celebrated on the 23rd. It's because we wanted to stay away from Sunday. It's 187th anniversary or celebration of this university. And it was 1837. Now you think about that, that's more than 2 decades before the Emancipation Proclamation. Yes. When it was illegal just to teach a Black person to read or to write their own name. I mean, that's flat out remarkable. The courage that those early founders and teachers and students had to actually do that. Then I like to kid with my Lincoln cousins, I'll call them, that everybody wants to be first. I always have to kid with them. I taught for 43 years. I was an educator. And if necessary, I used to sometimes have to teach numbers. Okay? I taught some math. For 13 years, I was a math teacher. And everybody knows that 37 comes before 54. Everybody knows that, but they have a problem with that equation. Okay, but even so, before Lincoln came about in 54, University District of Columbia was 51, I believe. Okay, so they are actually third. And then I think in 1856 came Wilberforce, I believe. And their claim to being first is that they were the first Black-owned degree granting school. So everybody wants to be first. Everybody's got their little claim to the throne. But I'm sure everybody understands 37 comes before 51, 54, and 56. So pretty simple in our mind. That's why we call ourselves the blueprint.
And definitely Cheyney University, it's a beautiful campus. You are the blueprint. And when you look at the sacrifices and the things that the founding fathers of Cheyney had to overcome, it is overwhelming to believe. It's the same thing that I said when I shook the hands of the young man that's a grandson of a Tuskegee pilot. I touched history. And when I came on the campus of Cheyney University, I was overwhelmed with history and the sacrifice. But the one thing that surprised me is the same thing that surprised me at my university. My fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma, new chapter, was the first to pledge a non-African American pledge. My campus, when I went home uh, October 13th, 2023, I saw just as many European, Hispanic, um, I don't know what the other groups were. It's such a diverse community on my campus, and everyone seemed to be in sync. You know, in order for Cheyney and these universities to exist, there has to be value in the education of being diversified. Can a white, Hispanic, Asian, or a what's the other groups? LGBTQ and all these groups, are they privileged to the same education just because it's a historically Black college? And is the value of dollars spent better spent at a historically Black college or spent at one of the 3,000 universities that's leaving many of these kids in such financial debt that the degree is not worth the paper it's on?
It's an excellent question, and I'm going to answer it in this manner that Cheyney, like the country, has evolved, definitely evolved. And I'm going to be very honest here. I know when I was a student, we were ignorant, I'll put it that way, of the plight and the challenges of the gay community, of people that were didn't quite fit in. I mean, we had our own issues, with those kinds of things. And we hadn't evolved far enough. I see the student body now, it's quite a bit more sophisticated. We have several students here now that are coming from the gay community. We have several students here now that are not African American, that live on campus and are comfortable and are seamless in their movements about the campus. Whereas I feel that would have been more of a challenge when I was a student. Now, this is my 50th year since graduation. Okay, so 50 years, you're supposed to grow. You're supposed to evolve. You're supposed to understand better and move forward with how the country changed, how we should be better understanding of people, who we are and who other groups are. So that's the good news, that we have grown as the country has grown, as we've become more accepting. Okay, so that's the good news there. So in terms of fitting in, I think anyone that comes to this campus now is readily embraced and accepted and just part of the fabric of this Cheyney community.
What about the value
I'm
of the
sorry.
education? I know that I know my son attended a very expensive private school,
Sure.
and upon his graduation, the keynote speaker said these words. She says 75% of the people graduating out of 1,500 people that will receive a degree today are going to ultimately end up in a mid-level management position, the same job they would have had if they spent 3 or 4 years working their way up through the system that they are when they graduate. She said, what makes a university important, and the reason why we hang our hat on it, is the 25% that go out into the world and they do something extraordinary and they give us credit for doing it.
That's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up because I couldn't convince either one of my kids. I have 2 children, 43 and 39 now. I couldn't convince either one of them to attend an HBCU. And like you, my son went to a very expensive school that I think I just finished paying for it. And he's 3 now. But he got an excellent education, as he would have gotten here. Okay. But it all comes down to your personal selection. And my wife and I always said that wherever you can get accepted and feel that's where you can prosper, that's what we'll pay for. Now, my daughter did go to an out-of-state school. She wanted to be out of Pennsylvania. The good news was it had a very high percentage of Black people attending. So I was satisfied with that and pleased with that. And she did very well as well. So I was pleased with that. Now, getting back to your question, the value, 73% of the students that attend HBCUs are eligible for some level of Pell grants. Okay, so that shows you the definite need there. Okay, but on average, the HBCUs are approximately 27% less expensive than your average white institution. So the value from a monetary standpoint is huge. It's huge. It's over a quarter of the same. You're getting the same education, if not better, because of the personal attention, the personal investment from the school, the opportunities that are not presented at your basic PWI for leadership, for stewardship that you would get at an HBCU that you may not get necessarily at a white institution. There aren't very many Barack Obamas out there. Okay, and by that I mean the following, if I could. Every school is going to have a student government president. Every school is going to have a class president for your freshman all the way through your senior year. Every school is going to have different clubs, fraternities, dormitories, presidents, or leadership opportunities throughout their campus. In your HBCU, odds are very high that it's going to be an opportunity for a person of color. And mostly it's likely it's going to be a Black person. A person that may not have gotten that same opportunity at a white institution. They might be even more highly qualified, more gifted in that area. But because they don't necessarily walk in the same footsteps or travel in the same circles or have the same comfort level even, maybe they're just going to hold that back a little bit and not get that same opportunity. So the opportunities presented at an HBCU are quite different. I know when I came here, I didn't think I had any leadership qualities whatsoever, none whatsoever. And I ended up as fraternity president, dormitory president, and senior class president, and I was on student government. So the opportunity presented itself, and I was embraced by other people that said, hey, why aren't you running for this? Or we're putting you up for this. Oh, and I said, well, yeah. And they said, no, you're definitely doing it because we see it in you. And presented with that opportunity, I had two choices: step up or step up higher. Because they had said, there's no turning back. We're going to support you. We're going to support you. You're going to be successful.
And I'm going to support you. And that's the reason why I say that the title of interim head of Cheyney Foundation needs to change. They should not, I wouldn't put that on anyone. Just give the man the damn job and let him do his job. But that's just me, because I know after this interview gets released, someone else is going to think the same thing and says, give that man the damn job. You know, he is already leading by example. Darren, how do people get in touch with you before I move on? Because I want to talk about the Pell Grant and the land grant and some other things. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, by email, or they can call me directly. Email is very easy. dthreadgill@cheyney.edu. That Threadgill is THREADGILL @cheyney.edu. The D in front of it for my first name, Darren. And then my phone number is very easy as well. I'm just looking right at my phone right over here, 610-399-2640. So it's very easy to get a hold of me. I'm very good at getting back to people if I'm not here to receive their call. I am very good at getting back to them within 24 to 48 hours. So,
and I can echo that. I can echo that because that's how we met. Now, there's an opposition. Currently, we've got an election coming up. And one of the things on the table that's not been highly publicized is the elimination of the Pell Grant. Now, I'm going to say this because this is probably the most direct way I can say that the Pell Grant would exist and an effect it had. When Deion Sanders was at Jackson State, if they eliminated the Pell Grant, I would almost guarantee you that 50% of his starters would not have been in football uniform. If Deion Sanders had opened the transfer portal when he went to Colorado University, if the Pell Grant has not been available, I would say another 75% of the athletes that traveled with him outside of his own children would not be wearing that uniform today. You know, even though we're talking about our culture, the Black community, the Pell Grant affects the opportunity to have an education of all underserved or underprivileged children and family to get an education in this country. But there's a strong opposition, which is, when they say that if you don't change history, history has a tendency to repeat itself. When William Penn provided an opportunity in Pennsylvania to allow Blacks to be educated shortly after his death, they created a Negro law that made it illegal for Blacks to be educated. The elimination of changing the truth in our literary world, of burning books or not denying access to those books. And now we're also denying access to people to have an education. And this is my theory, only because we want subpar workforce and not to have people that are leaders, such as yourself, such as myself, and many other people that we're associated with. Tell us the impact from your position of increasing funding for the Pell Grant, or the effect that Pell Grant will have on our society economically, socially, if the Pell Grant did not exist.
Well, for sure, the better educated we are as a community and as a society, the better life becomes, or the better living standards we have for all of us. I'm old enough to remember in 1960, I was 80 years old, and John Kennedy ran for president. And his big thing was he was going to put a man in the moon by the end of the decade. And people looked at him like he was out of his mind, said he was nuts. How are you going to do that? But by that simple statement, he was really saying is we need to improve the education of everyone to accomplish this goal. And by doing so, we need more college graduates. We need to use all the talent available. And when we raise the talent available via the space program was the motivator at that time, you're raising everything. You're raising the standard of living in every community. Now, the Pell Grant came along and said, hey, college is an opportunity that you can reach through the Pell Grant. Many of our communities that were marginalized and lower economically didn't have the all-with-all financially just to say, oh, yeah, well, that's a good idea. I think I'll go to college. Well, the Pell Grant made that a real possibility. And when college became a possibility, now you have an opportunity to educate people, to change their career path, to change their vision, to change their mission and their goals in life and say, oh, I can actually have a career that I can raise my standard of living, which will impact not just my family, but everybody in my community. I know I was the middle child of 5. And like a lot of people, I didn't realize how poor we were till I got old enough to really understand it. Okay, like a lot of people, because my parents kept us from that. They said, your job is to go to school, be the best person you can be, and learn everything you possibly can. But coming to college took me from lower economic status to now being in the middle class. And now my responsibility is to reach back, grab a hand, and see what I can do to make somebody else's opportunity the same. I did that for my own children, but there's a lot of people in our community that haven't had that same opportunity. Pell Grants make that eligible. My responsibility is also to shed some light on those opportunities, to grow other opportunities any way I possibly can. And quite frankly, for any school I can, but I'm partial to Cheyney, of course. But for sure, to elevate the opportunities for careers, through education for young people in our communities is my major focus, but I'll touch anybody that can help us. So Pell Grants are vitally important. We can't do without them simply because we haven't had enough of the upper echelon opportunities economically to be able to find our own ways for many people in our communities.
Well, we're talking here with Darien Threadgill. He is the interim head of Cheyney Foundation. He's responsible for bringing funding into the institution, but he's also, partially responsible for saving the institution. Before I ask more about how we can help Cheyney and the situation Cheyney is in currently and other historically Black colleges, Lincoln being amongst those, my Central State is being amongst those also. There are land grants that should be available. There is funding from the United States government that through red tape is being held up and monies are not being released to historically Black colleges, even though I heard a rumor that a big school in Ohio created a DEI program. It took $20 million that were should have been headed towards a historically Black college in Ohio that was diverted to that just because they created a DEI program for Blacks. I don't know how that happened. I'm not pointing it out because it was only in table talk, so I don't know that to be fact, but I'm going to bring it up just in case it is fact. But I do know that the graduation rate of Black females is higher than Black males, and it's probably the same truth to white males and Black males, Hispanic. At my college campus at Central State, 1 out of every 3 young African-American men or Black men don't see the second trimester or quarter for the simple fact they dropout rate. I know for me, I know this interview has nothing to do about me, but I know when my uncle, which was my rock, was murdered going into the winter quarter of my freshman year, I didn't attend one single class. I should have been on academic probation. I probably should have been kicked out, but I was broken. If it had not been for Miss Lucinda Adams and Dr. Art Thomas at Central State University believing in me, and this is the reason why I say the value of a education at a historically Black college becomes personal, because everyone that's there, that's a tenured teacher, has a responsibility to graduate another Black child and put out a superior product instead of inferior. They believed in me. How do we have the conversation for our young men when our women are thriving with education? How do we have that conversation or entertain or open the book and turn that page to say, stick it out?
So an excellent question. And there's a lot of reasons, but I go right to the core value that most people in this country understand. We live in a capitalistic society, okay? And which means that the number one goal for many people, or the number one motivator for many people, is how much money can I make, okay? The average graduate from an HBCU in the course of a lifetime will make $927,000 more than someone that does not finish high school. So now, even if you finish high school, then you're going to make, if you don't finish high school and you do finish, you're going to make on average and during the course of a career about another $400,000. You can get 2 years of college done, you're going to make more. But if you can get through all the way through undergraduate school, instead of dropping out of high school, you're going to make nearly $1 million more over the course of a career. So let's go right to the thing that most people relate to in this capitalistic America: money, money, but even equally as valuable, for me at least.
Well, let me give you another statistic.
Sure.
That the average person pays between $79, some $85 for a carton of cigarettes. The same investment per week, same investment if you were to save that money for 30 years, knowing that most of us are going to live 30 years, that individual on destroying his health will spend more than $137,000 smoking cigarettes and making someone else rich. So when you look at the numbers of return on investment, think about that. Every young man that sits there and rather smoke a little weed, smoke a cigarette, think about, every can of beer or alcohol. You ever seen a billboard advertising alcohol or cigarettes in the suburbs? I live in them. No, but where are they marketing to? What we call the hood, the neighborhood.
That's an excellent
Okay.
point. We see it
So
we don't have any cigarette factories. We don't own liquor factories. And the same thing with firearms. I don't know of any Black people that own or manufacture weapons. I don't know of it, but yet it's readily available in our communities. It's amazing.
yeah. So we can argue semantics about the pros and cons of what's being done and who's doing it to us and whatever, but we all are responsible for ourselves. At the end of the day, where everything that's about life is based on chance and choice, but also everything about life is based on opportunities. And if opportunities are not readily available, then we make other choices and we take other chances. Cheyney University, historically Black college, the first, 37 years apart from some, 40 something apart from other, whoever wants to claim first, Wilberforce, Cheyney, Lincoln, or whatever the case may be. But we're in a situation right now that land grant money needs to be available in order to develop buildings and infrastructures in order for Cheyney to be competitive. We know that politicians, our local politicians, I don't know these answers, so I'm asking you. Cheyney needs help. How do we help and support? And when I'm asking this question, I'm asking for a community inside of Pennsylvania, but also outside of Pennsylvania. I'm calling for graduates of Cheyney University and other historically Black colleges in order to be part of this conversation. Because if Cheyney disappears, because enrollment is down, I know that, it's public knowledge. What's next, Lincoln? What's next? You know, I do know there's a group of professional athletes that are pouring money into what we advertise, you know, the Spelmans, the Howards. They're pouring money into that. They don't need the money. I do, and I will say, because I know I'm going to get some backlash, they do need the money, but there's other schools that need the money. We need to keep the doors open. How do we keep the doors open to Cheyney? What do we need?
Well, again, we go back to the Capitalistic Society. We all need the money, but you're right. It's very easy when people say they want to make a donation to an HBCU, they get tired or they get lazy. Okay, and they want to give to some more of the more known universities that are doing better, okay, than the overwhelming majority, the top half a dozen to a dozen schools that are doing better than those of us in the smaller schools that are struggling to stay open. Okay, and supporting the Cheyney and other universities, some of it is for sure, some of it's money. Let's just no escaping that. But let's start with something that's free. Let's start with the easy thing that's absolutely free. Let's be positive about our institutions. Let's be, you know, on the course of, this is a great opportunity that my son or my daughter would get by attending an HBCU, because I know they're going to be in an environment that's going to see their intelligence, their integrity, their innovation, you know, their creativity. I know they're going to be that in that environment where their teachers are going to know their name, not their number, but their name. And if they see them faltering, they're going to call them in and say, what's going on and how can I help? Or if they see them doing superbly, they're going to call them in again and say, hey, you're doing really well. Why don't we think about elevating it in this direction? Or why would you consider doing this during your summer internship, which would be another opportunity for you to grow? So let's start by being positive. Let's start by embracing that. That's free. There's nothing in any school in the world that is absolutely perfect. But we tend, or some of us tend, to focus on the negativity or what I did not receive. Let's focus on the positive. So that's first. Let's say positive things and let's think positive about ourselves, about our institutions, about each other, and about the opportunities presented at an HBCU. Secondly, let's take a look at the financial structure and the ways you can support financially. And again, I'm going to go to what's free. Sometimes people say, well, I can only give you, $10 a month. Okay. Suppose you had 1,000 people giving $10 a month. That sounds pretty good to me.
Sounds good to me.
If you had 1,000 people doing $10 a month for 10 years, now you're making impact. And you know what? The school can depend on it. It's like steady income. That's how you grow. That's how you grow. Sure. And if we do that as a community and as alumni, whatever it is, and show that, pretty soon we're going to see some of those major donors say, hey, you know what? Let me take a look over here, see what's really going on. Why are all these people enthusiastic in a positive way investing in this situation? And they might come and listen to the mission. They might come and talk about the vision and the opportunities and what's happening here. and say, I can get behind that. How can I help? That's where we need to be. And here's another freebie. Sometimes it's not how much you can give. It might be who you know. Many of us work for businesses that if you're giving $50, the business will match. Many of us. Secondly, maybe maybe my boss or a person I've worked with or somebody I just met because our sons were playing Little League or playing soccer together. Our daughters were playing soccer together. And we got to talking, and when they got to know me as a person and I got to know them, they said, well, where did you go to school? I went to Cheyney. Well, what's going on over there? I've been hearing a little bit about Cheyney. Oh, yeah, well, here's what's going on. And they feel good about it. And they might have an opportunity. Either they might own a business or maybe they have financial means that would be supported. You can bring them over to institutional advancement at Cheyney or the Cheyney Foundation or any other HBCU that you're affiliated with and say, hey, look, let me share what's going on in my school and have them just get to know the school a little bit better. And by word of mouth, by conversation, maybe they turn you on to other people and you build that network of support, of financial support, of social support, of emotional support and spiritual support. And now you've got a growing community that will begin to thrive. But let's start with being positive about ourselves. Let's talk positive, not just to each other, but to every community. And eventually that message will come to ears that will say, I want to help. I want to be involved. I want to be engaged. I've been giving my money to so-and-so, but I can do a better job. I can make more impact here. I know my dollar that I'm getting here will impact the students at that school, and that student will return back to the neighborhood. And now we raise the expectation and lifestyle of all communities.
Let me ask you this, and I hope people are listening to this because this is extremely powerful. This conversation we're having. At Central State University, Congressman Joyce Betty is an advocate. She's been very instrumental in land grants for Central State University. I know our local politicians, they either help grow or they ignore and destroy things or allow things to disappear. By name, who's the local politician? And tell us how active and how much support we're getting from local politics right now. Because politics play a lot where money comes into their community and how it's being allocated.
Our local politicians aren't doing a whole lot for Cheyney. In fact, they really are doing kind of basically nothing.
Well, let me translate that. Our local politicians, which none of them are Black, I don't think, aren't doing crap for Cheyney. Okay, and I'm putting you on notice. You can't say it, Ms. TD. I can say it. And now the question is why?
Because not enough of us vote, or we don't understand how we have power through the vote. I know, for example, we used to have voting right here on campus. Okay, and they took that away. And I took the president down to a meeting down at the Philadelphia Club about a year ago, which was basically kind of like trading places, an old house, with all these people that had done very well in their careers. And every month they would have somebody in to talk about what they had, what their interests were, what they were doing, what have you. So this was called an Interact Club. So we went down. And as I said, one of the gentlemen there worked here on the West Town, which borders our school township office there, worked over there. He was the commissioner. I can't recall his name actually right now, but he said to me, we got to talk and said, we were really concerned, that Cheyney with its block of students would be a difference maker. And what he went on to say was that if ever the students at Cheyney or the population of the university decided to vote as a block, they had the power to swing local politics. They had the power, but you had a nucleus of votes. And let's say you had a close decision on what gets built or what doesn't get built. They had enough power to swing a local election. We don't realize that. We don't put a lot of stock into the political understanding, the fabric of the political landscape, and take advantage of the power that we truly have. And that's just really showing up twice a year, once in May at primary day and once in November at election day. We don't really buy into that. Many of us seem to think, it's not going to make a difference. It does make a difference. It makes all the difference in the world because that's where a lot of the decisions are made, particularly at the local level. We had a Dickens of a time trying to get permits and everything to take down our Pope Hall, which was our athletic facility, and we're now in the process of building a new one. It took us 3 years. That's all politics.
Wow. And believe it or not, your local PR department, and I'll say a local PR department, works in mysterious ways. I'm talking about our media. At 6 o'clock every single day, it opens up with how much drama and tragedies are happening in the city of Philadelphia. I know if something horrible happened at Cheyney University, we would make national news. But for some reason, that you can have the grandson of a survivor of the Tuskegee Airmen be presented and represented, and to tell his father's story, and have his grandkids involved, and have people come from Connecticut, New York, and all over the places in order to speak, and not one reporter from any of our major channels. I know Fox News, if there was some drama, they'll be there, but not one were there to shake his hand, to tell his story, to promote his book. And that is the best PR department that anyone has, our local news, unless you're a person of color, or you're being sentenced for something, or you're a celebrity that's being sentenced for something. But in the event that you're doing something good, how do we change the way the media portrays Black institutions and the graduates of those Black institutions? Like you said, you gave some numbers. And when you look at our judges, our lawyers, our teachers, congressmen, most of them had graduated from one of the 107 HBCUs.
Yeah. How do we change that message? That's a very good question. I think that's part of my job here in the foundation. I have the independence. I just need to find the resources to be able to support getting the message out. But as I said, one of the things, we got this right here, this thing between our chin and our nose. Let's start talking positive. We're all on social media. We're all over social media, but we're not on there talking about our schools. Okay, so that we need to educate ourselves in how to take advantage of social media. So that's one thing right away, I think. I think number two, you're right. When anything that's negative in our community gets headlines, and I'm going to reference, for example, a few years ago, there was a tragic situation that happened at our cousin Lincoln University, that happened, and it was front page. It was the big story for 2 days. Okay, few people know at the exact same time, in that same time frame, the same week, there was an incident that took place in one of the local communities, and someone was killed, and that person escaped at the time, and then went to Westchester University and hid out in their girlfriend's dormitory room. Was eventually caught in the dormitory room. Never heard a word about it. Never heard a word. So, point being, bad news in our community travels 1,000 miles a second. Bad news in other communities, we might hear about it. We may hear about it. Let's start talking about our positives. Let's focus on that. We have an over gratification to certain things that grab our attention. But I'm so proud to see our young leaders, like the situation down in, and I know I'm on a tangent here for a brief moment.
That's okay.
Down in Baltimore, where the mayor stood up and said, I don't even have time to talk about that. Wes Moore, the governor, when he started talking about DEI was the problem with the bridge that collapsed because the ship ran into it. He said, we don't have time for that. And Wes Moore is just tremendous, tremendous. If you get a chance, read his book. Tremendous book, tremendous book. I made sure my grandchildren have read it. When I was a principal of an alternative school, I made an assignment that every kid in that school had to read that book. Everyone. There are many, many, many positives, 100 times more positive stories coming out of our community if we choose to share them, if we choose to amplify them. If we want to use social media for them, we can do that. Let's be our own advocates. Let's sing our own praises. Or as the kids like to say, give our flowers to ourselves. Let's put it out there. Okay, there's many more great things going on in our communities than these other stories that get all the attention.
Well, you know something, I'm going to give you a helpful hint. I think in private conversation, we talked about it. You know, podcasting is the new social media. It's the way to get the truth out. I think every single university should be teaching and graduating people that know how to host a show, how to develop a podcast show and promote it. And it should be promoted weekly at every university. If you want the message to get out, this is one of the mediums that's available to us outside of, twerking and everything else on social media and TikTok and everything else. Not saying anything bad about them because it has its place, but to talk about the life experience of what it's like to be on campus, the woes and the goods and the bads. When you have conclaves and people are coming, podcasts, people, that's where media gets it. I've got a couple of students that are part of my network at James Madison, Central State University, that share those experiences, both ups and downs. And you'll be surprised on the compelling stories of what life is like. They talk about, the in spots to go to, the restaurants to go, you should go to on campus. They talk about the weekly events, but they also talk about the hardships of being away from at home and being on your own in the decisions. I got a young man at James Madison that one day will go pro. And he talks about being a student athlete, coming directly from high school. I got a young lady at Central State, Kayla Smith, only Black female to ever receive the George Wallace scholarship, STEM major, straight A student. I don't know how you get above a 4 point something, but she's one of those people. No one hears her story, but through her podcast, you hear her story. So if we can't get other people to promote us, we have to promote within. We have to develop those programs. And I know there's fundraising. And if you don't have someone that is able to write grants for you, I have someone on my team that I'm sure she'll be very happy to have a conversation to either teach you or show you how, or to become part of your program to do it for you. So we talk about people that have habits of success, and I'm showcasing 100 people that are in my circle of talking about their daily habits of how they are effectively living and how successful. If you have any habits that you like to share with us, DT, Darien Threadgill, explain to us and share with us your daily habits of success and how you get through the day.
Well, my day starts really, really early. Okay, I have this thing gifted with this busy mind. So I go to bed and I wake up usually. I'm not exaggerating here. This morning I woke up, it was 1:45.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't go back to sleep, which is not unusual because my mind gets busy pretty quick. So I got up, did my morning routine, which is get myself dressed, go out for my morning walk, 2.5 miles through my community. Come back, take my shower, shave, groom, what have you. Then I either lay down on the couch or I sit down on the couch. I plot out my day. Say, okay, what do I need? What do I want to accomplish today? And I knew I had this podcast coming up. So that was one of the things that went through my mind. Okay. And I thought about, okay, but are there any key things you might want to hit upon? I said, no, you just be yourself. But my point being is let's use the hours that we have, and let's be productive with it. I look at every day like this. Every day is a win. If I make it a win. Every day I want to accomplish something that wins for this university because that's where I'm working right now. Every day I want to do something that wins for my family. Every day I want to be true to myself, and every day I want to accomplish something that's positive for those that I come in contact with. Okay. I'm almost 72 years old. I've lived the majority of my life, and now it's time for me to figure out how I can make things better and help those that I've come in contact with. In particular, my grandchildren. I want to make sure that I'm leaving something behind or building something that, I'm building the kind of school that they would like to come to. okay? Because this is my immediate contact here, my university. And I was very concerned, you know, before President Walton came in there, we were going to lose it. We were going to lose our school. And I wanted to, when he came, I want to do everything I can while I still can breathe and while I still have the energy to do what I can to impact in a positive way this institution and every other HBCU. Okay, because if they can get the first one, now it's easier to make the dominoes fall. And we don't need to get down to where it's Howard, Spelman, FAMU, North Carolina Central, A&T, you know, Morehouse, just a few others, and we're down to a dozen or so. We don't need to be there. If they can get one, now it becomes easier to get two. So we need to be mindful. We need to be invested. We need to win the day for our institutions, for our communities. We need to be doing that. And all the other side issues, the differences, can be settled, can be put to the side, because they're all minor. The real impact and the real game we need to be in are helping our communities, helping our kids, building our future, and controlling it ourselves. Not dependent on everybody else. We'd like their help, but be dependent, that's different.
Aaron, we've covered a lot of information, and just before we're about to sign off, I have one or two other questions I want to ask you. How do people get in touch with you?
And my email is very easy. D, as in Darren, Threadgill, THREADGILL @cheyney.edu. And my phone number, 610-399-2640. You can call me directly. You can leave me a message. You can email me directly. I will, as I said earlier, I am very good at within 48 hours, usually 24, getting back with people. I'm very good with that. Okay. What is it possible for me to miss? It's rare. It's rare like holidays. Okay. I'm really good at getting back with people, because I know how frustrated I would be when I would call people and leave a message after message after message after message. No, I like to talk with people. I like to talk with them.
And we appreciate you taking time to talk to us. Darren, what do you want people to take away from this interview?
That our HBCUs are so very valuable. They are the lifeblood, or one of the main forms of lifeblood for our communities and for our young people. You know, I often look at the headlines. I was reading the Sunday paper yesterday, and I was reading the statistics about crime in the city, and we see it on the news about crime being up. Well, those things happen because we're not educated, or people are not getting the education that they need, because they don't see a way out. They don't see the possibilities, but everything they can do with their life. You know, our communities and our foundations and our ways of making a living have changed. It used to be, you know, when my parents were in their generation, you'd get a job for General Motors or another major corporation, and you'd be there 40 years. Our young people are now changing careers every 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You know, my son's 43, he's had half a dozen different jobs. But college and education prepares you to be in flow and be flexible with the changes as the economy changes, as the opportunities change. It enables you to have the confidence to take on new challenges and grow both as human beings and also as employees and entrepreneurs or people in management. And we need to tell our kids, yes, it's nice to be able to work in a dress shop, but it's better to own it. We need to show them generational wealth and how it works and how it can be developed. I've had that conversation with my children and with my grandchildren. We need to be doing those things. Think about it for a moment, if you could, Kevin. We have done every minimal, dirty, rotten job in this country. We have fought in every war valiantly. We have done everything possible to be ingrained as part of this American story. And yet, the moment someone else immigrates here, they jump ahead of us in the line. It's time for us to understand that through education, and other means, but I believe, as an educator, I believe in education. It is a powerful tool for us to push ourselves forward, to take control of our communities, to take control of ourselves individually, to take control through our HBCUs, because that's what a true investment is in our people and in our community. Educate ourselves and then begin to thrive. Begin to thrive. Begin to, those people that want to be entrepreneurs, bring it back to our community. Those people that want to be educators, make sure you educate those in our community or those outside of our community. Make sure they understand our community. If you want to be, a manager, okay, just remember, you don't want to be the only one in the boardroom. There's no reason why you need to be the only one in the boardroom. Remember where you came from and remember where the talent pool is. We have a tremendous opportunity, a tremendous opportunity. Let's be together. Let's work together. Let's get it done. Again, our HBCUs are a vital cog, huge opportunity for us to be successful and make our own success.
Amen. Darren, I want to thank you. I do have one more question. Since I started this podcast, I'm going into my third year. I deemed it to be very successful. I've always said when people are trying to tell me how to grow my show, they tell me that I had to market this way and I had to do that. But the way that I built my business and my career, I have thrived because of the circle of friends that I have. The circle of friends are the people like yourself that I'm associated with. They don't drive by an accident. They stop to help. I've had 5 people that have been guests on my show that total strangers have granted them the answer to this question. So on our show, there's a period replacing a question mark. So if I were to ask you your ask, ASK, if you had one ask or one dream to come true, I don't care big or small, Cheyney or whatever the case may be, and you wanted to put out there for someone to grant you that one ask, what would your ask be?
That's an excellent question. Again, as I said earlier, I'm a career educator, and by the way, I am going to take you up on that podcast thing. I'm gonna figure that out.
Why do you think I put it out there?
I'm going to figure that out because I have to get the image or the view of Cheyney and HBCUs. The truth has to be told. And so the one thing I would say, if I could really, summarize everything together, I'm a career educator. I believe education is a path for a transformative journey for any of our young people who aren't sure about themselves, where they want to go in life, what they want to do. Education gives you a view of the world. It gives you a view of everything that you might imagine or haven't yet imagined that you can be or may want to be. Okay. When I was like I said, when I was a kid, there were outside of my family, there was no one encouraging us at school to go to college. None. I had never heard that before in my years through all the way through 12th grade. They were telling me no, everything was what you can't do. And HBCU tells you what you can do, what you're capable of doing. And it may not even be what you have dreamed of doing. I got into education kind of by accident. I came here as a business major, but I got inspired because I was listening in on a conversation my freshman year between 2 guys having a debate about one teacher not being able to make a difference. And I was listening to it, so I chimed in with my big mouth as I usually do. And the guy told me, he challenged me. He said, well, take a class, and you'll see you can't make a difference. So I did. And you know what? I liked it. I liked it. And I took another class and I was caught. 43 years in education because of that conversation, because of that challenge. And I firmly also believe that 50% of your, 50 to 40% of your education in college is that stretching of your mind in those conversations. And that's likely to happen in that HBCU because you have that comfort level of who you're exchanging words with. I don't know that that would happen at your basic PWI. I know it didn't happen for me through high school. I know it didn't. And I know, that here, when I came here, they told me, oh, you're graduating. You're going to do the work because here education's important and you have the talent. You have the skill. I do know when I was in my 4 years of high school, there was one Black male that went to college and graduated, and that was me. There were others that were smarter than me. There were others that had more talent than me and more ability than me, but they didn't have the advantage that I had. I went to a school that said, you're going to do this. We're going to bring you along and you're going to get an excellent education. And we're going to see to it because we are invested in you. We expect you to be invested in yourself. And that's the message of the HBCU. So education for me has helped me raise my level of living and my standard of living for my family. And, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the education I got here. It was a wonderful education. Cheyney was turning out teachers at the time, it was a bedrock for education in Pennsylvania. So I would advise anyone considering going to college, start with an HBCU. Don't just immediately say, well, I saw Penn State or I saw this other school with a big stadium full of people. That's all nice and dandy. At the end of the day, what are they investing in your graduation? Do they really care? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe a few, but the overwhelming majority, are they going to give you the opportunity, as I explained before, about leadership? The chance to learn what you're really capable of about leading groups? I was a principal for 7 years. I would have never have done that. Never even considered that level of leadership had I not come to Cheyney, not come to an HBCU, because it was in me, but I just didn't know it. They helped me discover that here.
Well, TD, Mr. Threadgill, I want to thank you. This is probably one of the best interviews that I've ever received. I don't know how well I gave it. I've always thought the first time I would talk about an HBCU, I would be talking about Central State University. I'm not disappointed, but I'm not surprised. But I am honored, and it's a privilege to be part of this history. And I would also like to be part, as we talked about off camera, of the history going forward of Cheyney University, because it's part of the brothership, the fellowship that you and I have, being part of the Divine Nine and our sisterhood. It is our obligation and responsibility not only to support what we're homegrown, but also support what is grown outside of our communities and our neighborhood. So you've got my commitment 24/7. You've got the foundation of my platform 24/7, 365 days a year. And to my listeners, I ran this purposely a little longer than the 35 or 40 minutes that most podcasters will listen to, because this was a story that had to be told. This was a conversation that had to be had. This is something that needs to change. The mindset of the value of education, where the value of education comes from, is the people that pour in to an empty cup that's thriving or thirsting for knowledge. And our young people, both Black and white, are that empty cup that needs to be filled. And no place ever is more comfortable than a warm cup of knowledge, because the mind is a terrible thing to waste, than coming from someone that has a personal attachment and a personal commitment to your education. And for what both Mr. Threadgill and myself have explained to you, you get lost in a big college. You may have a degree that says, oh, it's great. I tailgate with 30 or 40,000 people or whatever. But these conversations, these relationships will never be had on the level that Mr. Threadgill and myself are having right now with you. So we've covered a lot of information. And I hope at some point this episode touches you in a place in the center of your chest that makes the way that you think up here, see the value of an education for your child a little differently. If you like what you've heard, I've asked you to go to our YouTube page and follow us at RMK Productions and Network. If you really like what you've heard and you want to get involved, reach out to us at info@rmkproductions.org. Fill out the information if you want to be a guest or you have a story to tell. I would love to have figures from Cheyney University or any historic Black college to come on my show and talk about the value of education. People need to know this. Thank you, Mr. Deion Sanders, for putting us on the map and making us not a sideshow or a sidebar to the conversation, but showing you the value of not only our talent, and Mr. Deion Sanders graduating 80% of his athletes, where most of us can't graduate 50% of them. We thank you. TD, I thank you for emotionally being invested. I thank you for your commitment and coming back to the university and giving back, because that's what we need. Our children need to see examples of the finished product in progress. And so I want to thank all my listeners. My grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone else, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, we'll fade to black and we're out. Thank you, TD.
Thank you.